We should start with what is an absolute blockbuster. Brock to the Browns, but really, it's all about the money.
Well, Susie, this is the type of trade that we have never seen in football. And if we go back to free agency last year, Brock Osweiler was the biggest name on the board on the opening day of free agency last year. And if we go to this year, once again, for different reasons, Brock Osweiler is the biggest name on the board. This is the type of trade we've never seen. It is, I think, Bill, unprecedented. It is creative in a way that nobody imagined this, because everybody knew that the Texans were stuck with Brock Osweiler's contract. So what they did was they traded Brock and a second-round draft pick along with a sixth-round draft pick, and they get back a fourth this year. There's the trade. It's an analytics trade. Paul DePodesta is in the Browns front office. It's a money trade. There was no team that had more salary cap space than the Cleveland Browns. They entered today with more than $100 million of cap room. They re-signed Joe Bitonio to a 5-year, $51 million extension with, I think, $23 million guaranteed. They give Kevin Zeitler a record deal for a guard. And then they go make this trade, which I can tell you sent shockwaves through the league. People calling up saying that they never expected this. They never thought of it. One person described it as brilliant. Another person had said you'd never seen a trade like it. And Brock Osweiler is the Cleveland Browns property, and they're trying to trade him.
But a simple way to say it is the Browns actually bought a second-round pick, and what they're doing is they're stockpiling draft picks.
Yeah, they bought it for $16 million guaranteed. And they're stockpiling draft picks, assuming that they're going to hit on those draft picks. And if you look back for 25 years, the batting average on first-rounders is 40% miss rate. The batting average overall, the best people do, is about 565 through the entire draft, the best of us. The worst of us do in the 450 range. So there's no guarantee that those 8 picks that they have in the first and second round, am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Total?
Yeah.
8 picks in the first and second round over the next 2 years, this year and next, are going to translate into 8 players. In fact, history would tell you no.
There's a certain level of scouting arrogance that takes place in this kind of transaction, because what you're doing is you're still pushing out gratification, right? Because, Bill, you talked about the fact that it's going to take a little while for these guys to start paying dividends, even though as you keep stockpiling future draft picks. And what you're saying is, one, we're going to be around long enough to see these guys all pay off and all of this come to fruition.
But the coaches may not.
That's right.
We're talking about the second staff.
That's right. So what you're doing here is, look, coaches sometimes, it'd be interesting to hear how the coaching staff looks at this. Because they're saying, hey, look, this is great that you're stockpiling these picks, but last year we had 14 picks make this team.
I would go out on a limb and say it isn't just about the coaches. It could be a total regime change if this doesn't go right.
Sure.
I would say this.
Let me just tell you this. Adam mentioned Paul DePodesta. The Browns are obviously structured in their front office in a way that's different in the NFL, and these guys have a lot of Major League Baseball background, including Paul DePodesta, who is the chief strategy officer. I spoke to 2 people in the organization after this trade was made. Both of them mentioned acquiring the second-round pick from Houston. Neither mentioned acquiring Brock Osweiler, so he's a mere afterthought or commodity that they intend to clearly move on from. Here's the quote from Paul DePodesta explaining the motivation to the Browns. There are only so many ways to spend cap space until it becomes woefully inefficient. This was a creative and effective way for us to use some of our cap space. We now have, as Bill mentioned, 3 first-rounders and 5 second-rounders over the next 2 drafts.
So essentially, they paid $16 million for
right.
the second-round pick, which makes this trade so unprecedented. And we can go into great lengths about what this will be for Cleveland, and there are some interesting and intriguing things there that they might be trying to do with these picks. But this is also about the Houston Texans and what they're trying to accomplish. And the team that Tony Romo wanted to play for the most, from what you were hearing, so it seemed, would be the Houston Texans. Well, Tony Romo has already posted a goodbye Instagram video on his Twitter feed and Instagram saying it was great. Thank you so much for the Cowboys and all the memories for the 13 seasons there together. And it certainly seems on the surface this was an attempt to clear out Brock Osweiler and clear out cap space so they could make a realistic run at getting Tony Romo to transfer from Dallas to Houston.
Well, we know that Tony Romo's career in Dallas is over. We just don't know exactly when, and we don't know which franchise he'll be playing for next. We came into today fully expecting he was going to be released because that's what 48 hours ago Jerry Jones told Tony Romo in a phone call was going to happen. However, the Cowboys have been pushing Jerry internally to be patient and try to create some leverage to get something of value in a trade for Romo, and he is now attempting to do exactly that using the interest of the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos. Now, the Houston Texans, I think, are the best fit and the place that Romo desired the most. And now they very clearly have an opening for him because I will tell you that I believe with a great deal of certainty that Bill O'Brien, if he got Tony Romo, did not want Brock Osweiler in the quarterback room as his backup.
Well, with that being said, I think if you're Jerry Jones, you're smiling right now because Houston has done you a great.
Cleveland's done
you a great service in the fact that you have just taken that quarterback away along with the cap, and now you've opened the door to say we want Tony Romo. And if you're Jerry Jones, you're smiling. You're going, okay, well, let's do this.
Now, just to put a cap on the Cleveland part of it, because it's the Romo part that's interesting. Cleveland's all on the come, unless they make a deal for a quarterback. But just to put a capper on it, if they released Osweiler, they would have paid $16 million for a second-round pick.
He's getting that money regardless.
Hold on. There you go. Sorry, Bill. Finish up.
You were adamant there, Bill.
If they somehow find a taker, it's not going to be at $16 million. It's going to be the same trade. You pay me to take Brock Osweiler, and you pay the salary. So what would if we were trading? I would say I'll take him at minimum salary, which is about $1 million, maybe a little less, and you eat 15 of it, and then pay me something to take him.
Right.
So the bottom line is that at minimum they're probably going to pay $15 million for that pick, for the second-round pick.
Well, Adam, you've already tweeted that there might be some interest
They
in Brock
are
Osweiler?
talking to teams about trading Brock Osweiler. They have gotten calls. And I'm just telling you, we'll see how this shakes out. And I said, really? They've gotten calls. And I think they're going to trade Brock Osweiler, and they're going to parlay that into another pick, whatever that is. I don't know if it's a late-round pick.
Josina?
But I think they're trying to trade him. I think they're going to be successful in trading.
The fact that there is a market to trade for Brock Osweiler is fascinating.
That's the quarterback market.
Fascinating.
Josina, what do you have?
I just wanted to add real quick, just got a text from Brown Source saying we do need a quarterback, so we will look at all options, RG3 independent.
Okay, so that
for Houston, I think this is more about remedying a mistake you made last year. Getting rid of Osweiler, the mistake that, the painful way it was to watch him play versus the New England Patriots and not get the job done, because now that you're clear of this, or you can reset at the quarterback position, but I don't understand the excitement if that quarterback is Tony Romo. Since when did Tony Romo guarantee that he'd be available for the entire year, even? Did he get healthy all of a sudden? I don't know. I don't see a healthy Tony Romo being, is it more than a year?
So Houston's need is the same, more obvious maybe, but Romo's still the same flawed veteran, 37-year-old, injury-prone
soon to be 37.
Absolutely, but I think the celebration should be them moving on from Osweiler.
So get out of jail free or get out of jail for $60 million.
That was the huge mistake they had to get
The one thing we know about Houston, they've had 8 quarterbacks start for them since coach has been there. So whether they get Tony Romo or not, and it looks like all signs say Tony Romo's going there, whether it's via trade or they release him and let him go, they're used to playing multiple quarterbacks. They've done this. This has been their livelihood since they've been there. They had 8 starters already. So I think,
And they've won the division 2 years in a row.
But look, the philosophy is, when it comes to quarterbacks, you keep on trying till you get it right. And sometimes it takes a lot of guts, courage, whatever other language you want to use, to correct the mistake and move on and get it right.
There was no sense in holding on to him. Exactly.
Here's the bottom line. There are 2 teams right now that do not have any quarterbacks for all intents and purposes. The Houston Texans and the Cleveland Browns. Does the name Jimmy Garoppolo ring a bell?
And that's what I'm saying. If we look at the whole thing is, okay, they traded for the picks and everything like that. And yes, it seems like the formula of Cleveland is to stockpile picks. They like the draft. All of those draft picks still on their roster right now. I've got to assume that they're even smart enough to know having all of these picks eventually it's too much. Do something with them. Trade them. What's it going to take to get Garoppolo out of New England?
What do you think it would take? You know Bill better than anybody.
Do they know it would take something more than that to get Garoppolo out of New England?
Adam, I know what you're going to say. You insist he's not going.
Is that why they are stockpiling the picks?
Saying it. We keep talking about it.
Well, let me ask you this. Look, we got a 40-year-old quarterback.
Everybody's got a price.
In New England, right? You got a 40-year-old quarterback. You got Garoppolo that's sitting behind him. And you said the numbers, and I wrote them down here, Bill. You said if New England says, okay, here's the deal. I want 2 1s and 3 2s.
Guess who has them?
Guess who has them?
Well, just for I mean, there's lots of picks.
Good luck building the rest of your roster.
Well, that's another part of it, absolutely. But now Cleveland, with this trade of $16 million for a second-round pick, basically has 7 picks in the first 4 rounds in 2017 and 7 picks in the first 4 rounds of 2018. They have stockpiled picks.
And what
I know
do they get if they trade Brock Osweiler?
And that's an excellent question.
$16 million is worth 0. No one. It's an old axiom. And by the way, it's guaranteed. Who's going to take that on? $16 million.
Seth, you're saying that there's people who are
saying the
interested?
same thing about Brock Osweiler.
That's Cleveland.
Okay.
Put them aside. They didn't trade for Brock Osweiler.
Are you saying that there's more teams that are interested in acquiring Brock Osweiler from the Browns now?
I'm just saying they're getting calls. I don't know how this is going to work out. All
I guess
saying
like
is,
every time
for
he gets
weeks
traded,
and months, we said
gets
Houston
cheaper.
was stuck with that contract, and there was a way out. And I don't know the way to do it. We're going through this right now.
Oh,
But
they found a way.
Maybe there's a way that Cleveland absorbs some of the. I don't know. The money.
You
I have
go,
no
and then
idea.
we're going to move on.
Here's what makes this such an unconventional and potentially unattractive thing in the NFL as it is in the NBA, that an underperforming player like Brock Osweiler with a bad contract is a desirable commodity to at least one team. Bill, are we even sure that this is legal, this trade? I mean, it'll be scrutinized in the front office, right?
Yeah, well, every trade has to be scrutinized. Now, there's nothing that I can think of off the top of my head that would say that it's not legal unless they mistreated Osweiler in some way, shape, or form. In other words, they can't say to him, you can't come to the offseason program. You can't work out. His contract's guaranteed. They're on the hook for every penny of it, which is so that part of it is they can't deviate from. They're stuck with it. Now, again, why, if I wanted Brock Osweiler, would I take on a $16 million contract? I mean, they'd have to pay me to take him. It's the same trade. They're going to make the very same trade that Houston made with them.
Yeah.
All right, let's put a period on this for the moment.